right. Hello and welcome to another episode of Fly on the Wall podcast, filmed in a brand new studio today, thanks to our friends at TEC, the Executive Centre. This is a podcast I've been waiting to do for far too long. Far too long. Sorry. You know how long it's been. I'm joined today by a good friend of mine, someone I enjoy immensely spending time with, and I'm sure this is going to be really, really valuable. Mim Wood, to her friends. Coach, all-round excellent human being, community builder. I'm not going to do the intro because I won't do it any justice. Tell me a bit more about yourself.
Oh, I always love this question. And it's always funny, I think, when you've known someone for a long time as well and you meet them under certain circumstances, you're like, oh, Josh does this or Mim does that. But often we don't know the backstory for a lot of our good friends. You're like, what do you do again? So interestingly, I was actually just talking to someone about this yesterday and how all those moments that matter, all the sort of random things that happen in our lives lead us to where we are. And I remember when I was finished uni and did a bunch of other things and ended up taking a job. Now, back in those days, we answered ads in a paper. So
You're not that old. Come on.
Answered an ad in a paper for a reception at a fitness place, and I wasn't really paying too much attention. I thought I was going to work at a gym. And it turns out that it was the start of what was going to be one of the best jobs and the start of my career in coaching, really. But back in those days, that was in fitness education, learning how to train personal trainers. And then I learned all about motivation, desire, communication, how to help people achieve their goals. And one thing led to another into management, coaching, travelled overseas. So worked in gyms, also worked in nightclubs as well.
We'll get to that, don't worry.
So very interesting career leading to this point, trying lots of different things in sales, marketing, social media, running food and wine events as well. So I've tried my hand at a lot of different careers, which again is timely because where I've landed now at this point in my life, I'm super passionate about helping people understand who they are, what they're good at, and how to get to where they want to go, which is where I think, our conversations around a North Star have been really powerful. So who am I and a bit about me? Well, I guess I'm lots of things, but at this point in my life, I'm very much a coach and helping people achieve their goals.
Particularly, and of relevance in this discussion is your interest in men and helping men go on that journey and dealing with, to steal your own terms here, big life events, whatever they may be. I think it's an area that's not underrepresented. That would be a bad way of putting it, but a lot of people just assume, executives, people of a variety of backgrounds, they got it all under control, everything's great. But in your experiences, it's far from the case.
Yeah, it's for over the past few years, I was working in tech as an in-house corporate coach, and something that I noticed as I was working with a lot of men in that industry and thinking about the fitness industry before that as well, was I started to see the same patterns go on again and again with guys as they were getting towards the 50 mark, starting to have a bit of a freak out. And so for anyone watching, you might also know people in your life. You might be that sort of guy thinking, have I made myself as a man? Have I achieved what I thought I would by this age? And unfortunately, 50 heralds are, whether it's a halfway point, now as we're all living longer, but it does herald a significant point. And often for people, they might still be raising kids. They've got aging parents. All the kids have left home. They've paid everything off. And they're like, well, I got everything, but why do I feel so empty? And so thus I think began, building on what I learned from the fitness industry and coaching and about helping people achieve their goals. I think this has become, for me now, that passion area because I think men need more support and understanding. Yeah. And happier men, for me, equals a happier society. It doesn't matter what gender or, what sort of relationship situation we're talking about here. I think it is an area, and I will say it is underrepresented, and I'll call that out as a woman because I think the more that we can focus on the things that we want, the more that we can focus on what we want to see more of, more courage, more honesty, more integrity, more good stuff, instead of focusing on what we don't want. Like, that's got to be the area.
Yeah, and I think every time you see something that happens that is a terrible representation of men, you look at it and go, that's bad, rightfully so. But what leads to these sort of situations? And I think it's a great area to be focusing on, and one I know you're immensely passionate about.
Yeah.
Having met some of the people you've worked with, I know they're all good people on the other side of it as well. We'll go back to the start. Let's talk a bit about how that journey started. And were you always this kind of inquisitive, emotionally intelligent person? How did it all kind of come together, or was it just happenstance?
Oh, that's a great one. I think I've always been curious. My parents said that I was like a little happy sponge when I was growing up, so wanting to soak up information. However, I felt like I had to learn a lot about asking questions, and it was probably through my experience learning about psychology and learning about people and how to delve deeper. So I really put a lot of effort into that. I probably came out just of the generation where maybe asking questions wasn't done as much as I feel now as younger generations are coming through, like they're all over it. And of course now with AI, you can get all the information. So so I think definitely curious about people and wanting to understand what makes them tick. But I think through all those different experiences, and everyone's got a story, right? Everyone's worked different jobs, had different managers. I feel really fortunate that I worked with great men and women from the start. And that first CEO who hired me in the fitness industry will always be one of those people, I think, who's been so influential. Having those opportunities, he was more than happy to see me succeed, and also coached and challenged me a lot. So I think, yes, it's a bit of me, but also all these wonderful role models along the way.
The pieces that make the jigsaw puzzle.
Oh, yeah.
That has brought the sparkle today. So we'll go back again, right? Fitness, because I'm going to kind of tell your life story a little bit before going into what you do, etc. Because I always found it interesting. I know we got little morsels over many conversations. Fitness into managing DJs and nightclubs and gym floors to nightclub doors. Thanks, John Sermon. Thank you. Give him a shout out. Run me through that process. You've been running gyms, you've been training and educating people, and then decided I'm going to do something completely different.
Yeah. All right. So here's all the dodgy stuff. In case you're wondering, is she all sparkle and light? Yes, but I also love dance music as well. So it's just something that's been part of my spirit for a long time. And so listening to house music, electronic music, and just fell in love with it and decided to move to Ibiza just before my 30th birthday. And thought, I don't know how I'm going to get a job, don't speak Spanish. They're definitely in the middle of a recession. What could go wrong? So turned up in Ibiza a few weeks before my 30th birthday, had sorted accommodation at least, and made some connections. And that was one of the best experiences of my life, just moving with an intuition or with a gut feel that this is going to be the right thing, even though nothing about it made sense. But used my networking skills, and I didn't even know I was networking. I just was like, oh, they're interesting. I'll try and get to know them. I'll see how I can help. How can I add value? So it was a really good exercise in being resourceful, and ended up working with the DJs that I admired, and they're all good blokes, all really lovely. So I saw a side of the dance music industry which maybe not everyone gets to see. And of course, yes, there's all the champagne and silliness, but at the end of the day, the transferable skills around running a gym or training personal trainers and being in education to the operations of running a nightclub, they're much the same. The hours are slightly different. One finishes at 6 a.m., one starts at 6 a.m. But yeah, it taught me a lot. And then I was running a DJ agency with a couple of friends. So I've had a really interesting life working with lots of different people.
DJ agency. Okay, now this part I was not aware of. This is good. We're learning something.
Right.
This is what it's all about. So your job was to then book the DJs for various locations around Europe or just in Ibiza?
Globally, actually. So after Ibiza, I moved to London, and just in that transition period, that's when I met the guys running the agency, and they said, can you come on and help? And some of those guys that were in that agency, certainly one in particular is now a superstar in electronic music. But yeah, you're booking people, organising schedules, working with promoters. There's all the unglamorous side of it, which is making sure all the instructions are followed before a DJ gets on stage. And I think back in those days as well, there was probably less awareness about mental health than there is now. And I think that's something that I've certainly learnt working with so many guys making sure they were looked after. And I was always a bit of a nurturer, even when I was in nightclubs and running the agency. You know, if they're coming in tired, they don't need another bottle of vodka. They usually just needed a hug and a cup of tea, you know.
Bottle of water,
Yeah.
cup of cement. Go on, you're on in 3 hours. Get yourself together.
Yeah. I think the coach was there even way back in the nightclubs.
What was that transferable element of that part? Because that's fascinating, right? Most people will never have the experience of doing that. I think I'm really lucky in my role to be able to impact a lot of people and what they do. Your role, much the same in that scenario. You know? You're out there making sure that the person is having a good time, that the experience for the punter is good and everything like that.
Yeah.
If you mess up, it messes up pretty big. Did it go wrong many times?
No, but just. And I think anyone who's worked in, let's just say show business, something or running events, actually, anyone who's running events will know there'll be some sort of little glitch or something can happen, but magically the lights go on, the people are in the room, you know, the feet on the dance floor or, you know, whatever it might be, running a conference, there'll always be something. So sometimes it would almost look like it was about to go wrong. Sometimes it was me that, you know, sort of, you know, got something wrong. But, usually it was like, can I make sure that this person is in a good space, feeling good? Because the difference between someone, and I remember one of the guys actually having a panic attack once, but, you know, when you're being paid $1 million to get on stage.
You get on stage.
Yeah, you absolutely do. So it's certainly an interesting industry, and I think there's been some notable circumstances where DJs haven't been well looked after, and I think things are in a much better space now in dance music. But those were the early days of working in events and nightclubs and looking after DJs that I think taught me a lot about coaching, actually.
People in general, I'm sure.
Yeah, you can read all the books, but like the difference when you're actually working with someone and tapping into them in that moment, that's where you earn your stripes.
People are just people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
How many difficult entourages? Yeah, surely they're the hard part, not the actual performer themselves, everybody else that goes with it.
There's only 2 moments where I didn't actually know someone in the entourage was actually famous in a different music industry. I don't follow R&B. I'm very much electronic music. And I kicked that person out of the AAA area, not knowing they were a superstar in a different industry. And I was like, I don't know who you are. You're behaving badly. Out. And then, got a call. And then the girlfriend of a very famous performer was drunk and threw his birthday cake all over the walls of the VIP room, which is sort of funny, but like a mess to clean up.
Not really funny for you, yeah.
And I love cake. I was like, what a waste of cake.
Yeah. And we know that there's one famous person who likes throwing cake, but not in this scenario. That's not the same person.
No, it's pretty good.
So you've managed to accrue these amazing transferable skills, the ability to, as you say, that nurture, that kind of caring, right? And that's really important when it comes to someone who's coaching. What's next? You've traveled the world. You've seen all of this. You make your way home.
Yeah. And it wasn't all a perfect ride, like coming off being in Ibiza and then London. I'll be really honest. I was somebody to a lot of people. People would be like, oh, hey, Miriam, we're in town. Can I get in? So 1 minute you're really important and the next minute you're not. And again, going through that in my own way, in that experience of, okay, is London really for me? Do I go back to Sydney? And then starting again when I came back to Sydney, that was a little bit challenging. And again, that gives me a glimmer of understanding to what celebrities or famous people, sports people, we see this happen quite a bit when people transition out of careers. And we're talking big time people. I was just a little person. When they're in the public eye and they're really important. And then what happens when they change? And no one's looking at them anymore, and then for them to really understand themselves. So I think some of those early understandings have then become quite useful later on, and came back to Sydney, worked back into the fitness industry again, and then into sales training and delivering more education, and then think, I really love coaching. So that was where I started to formalise my qualifications, and then ended up starting my own coaching business from there.
Fantastic. And I think it's, you touched on a point there, it's identity, right? It's how transferable back to our world now is that people often, particularly executives, power, strength, their own way of viewing themselves through the lens of, I am the C-suite at XYZ.
Oh, yeah.
And we've all been there. I mean, I've been there, and you go through the end of it and go, who am I now? Well, you're still the same person. You just don't have the same job title.
Yeah.
That's quite a normal feeling for people to go through. Is that something you see coaching now?
Yep. Yeah, all the time. I was just chatting to a client this morning, actually. He's in his mid-50s, career CEO, and on the surface, everything looks fine. But just finishing up with a role this week, and I was like, "Ooh, are we celebrating freedom or uncertainty, or both?" So those different stages, I think, where when you're in your mid-50s, you've got different decisions to make, and that identity of, who am I, who have I been, and will this next gig be my last, and what will I be if I'm not that guy or girl anymore. But given most of my clients are men as they're transitioning, particularly through career, I see this a lot. Like, oh, but I've been this all my life. If I'm not this, then who am I? Yeah, and we're so much more. We are so much more than the work that we do. So it is a big conversation, I think, for people to feel. Something that I want for them is to feel rock solid in who you are as a person and all those amazing skills. Are you good at caring for people? Are you good at asking questions? Are you good at, thinking about different angles of a situation as opposed to just the managing director or the business development or the C, whatever it might be?
I think it's something which, I know that you've got an affinity for as well, is the ability to take pause, to actually stop after these kinds of scenarios. And I literally had the same discussion this morning with a similar kind of person. My advice was take that month. If you want to take the month, 25 years, I've not had a break, was the words that came out of this person's mouth. For more than 2 weeks, I think was his words. And I said, you don't really know what you want to do next until you actually take stock, look internally, figure out what that looks like. And I think a lot of people like being on the hamster wheel.
Yeah, well, it feels familiar. And I think from what I see with a lot of men, and women will have a similar experience. It's just that it shows up differently. So for anyone watching, yes, of course, I coach women. I work with women as well, but I'm really interested into the lived experience of men and the masculine because it's a different genetic expression, let's face it, different way of seeing the world, different way of communicating. And there are different pressures and expectations of men, rightly or wrongly, that will show up differently. So I think for a lot of guys, you get a job, and that starts to come through as of sort of 16, 17, 18. Yeah. And so depending on what your path might have been, you might have been out in a trade doing something, really hands-on or sales, whatever it might have been. Some people might have gone into qualifications. And so you just sort of go from one thing to another, just like I did, falling through fitness and into events and nightclubs. However, if you've never stopped to take any sort of pause or do something different, you might have had kids and you got the house and you did all of this, that can feel really scary, especially as you get older as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Uncertainty is a killer, isn't it, for a lot of people?
And we're so busy all the time, aren't we? There's something to distract us at every given moment. How often do we stop?
People spend more time scrolling than they do thinking, I think, in this day and age.
Yeah.
That's a segue we won't go down on this discussion. That's podcast number 2. Run me through a little bit about your process, right? I come to you and I say, Mim, I don't know. I'm sure that's probably how some of them go, actually. I don't know.
Yep. Good place to start.
Help me.
Yeah. People often use words like I'm stuck, lost, at a crossroads. And sometimes they're quite a visceral sort of sensation as well. Like I've got something gnawing away at me. I've actually heard that quite a few times. I've got this feeling, a heaviness in my gut, or it's like a tightness. I've always got a headache. So people will come to me either using some of those words or describing sensations. And part of my ethos is around helping people, as I said, get very clear on who they are and what they're good at, where they want to get to, and how to get there as well. So some clients will have an idea of, okay, well, I know I want to get here. I've got a bit of an idea. I just need to figure out the how and some accountability, in which case I can help them with a different type of action plan. For someone who feels lost, stuck, or whatever that might be a journey. And just we start with what I would call a tip it all out on the table session. Like, well, what are we dealing with here? There's all the things that I should be or should have. There are beliefs, some of our conditions, understanding ourselves. There's the work situation, there's family, relationships, our health, finance. There's all these different pots that make up our life. And I'm really fortunate to have had that health and fitness background as well, because I bring a lot of that into my coaching. And I'll be honest, sometimes a lot of people aren't moving enough or drinking enough water.
Of course.
There's a few simple things that if we can just get back on track, some of the other bigger life problems don't seem as scary. So I bring a lot of that into my coaching as well. Tip it all out on the table, figure out what we're dealing with here, start to work out some of those priorities. And we're not trying to get from, if you're feeling a 2 out of 10 about life or worse, we're not trying to get from a 2, up to a 10 overnight. It might be getting from a 2 to a 5, identifying, well, what are a couple of key areas we can have some wins in. And I think some of the ways that people get started, and for myself, and I've gone through changes as well, some of those first steps can be so embarrassingly simple. We're like, oh, no, surely it's got to be more than that. But I tell you what, if you get people feeling good, sleeping better, feeling good in their health and their relationships in life, the bigger stuff's much easier to sort out.
That's true. Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah.
So really you're holistic in your approach there. It's like, there's a lot of people that are coaches around career or around bits and pieces or health and fitness, etc.
Yeah.
Your background actually allows you to go, well, maybe we can pull a little bit from that and we can take a little bit from this. That ultimately lead to that person being more happy, healthy, self-aware, fulfilled.
Yeah.
I've just written the marketing, haven't I?
You really have. Thank you so much. Well, it's interesting. And again, because I work with men so much, I'm conscious of there needing to be a logical or a pragmatic framework. So yes, I pull in neuroscience. Yes, I pull in the science behind fitness as well. But we're also humans, and it's about how we feel a lot of the time as well. So you can have the fanciest plans in the world and all of this, but if you're not feeling great, then we have to really understand and get back into our body. And what I mean by that can be things like breath work and movement and exercise. So yes, I pull on all of that. At the end of the day, I still give people a logical plan that they can run to with simple, actionable steps. Accountability is really, really important. And I remember an experience I had in my last business, and we were talking about this idea of the North Star and that metaphor. What am I aiming for here? If I can just keep my eye on that one area, that will impact all of my decisions. And I really liked that idea. And so some of what I do now with clients is helping them develop their own North Star, understanding where they're going, how to get there, and what decisions they can make.
I like that. You'd be surprised that I like that. Yeah. It's almost like having a guide to take you on a journey towards something smart. Yeah. You know a thing or two. Is it, you've seen a lot of people now, right? And I'll reword that. That sounds horrible. You've worked with a lot of people over your career. You've spent a lot of time helping people in that period of time. Is there anything that you look at now and not generalizations? Is there anything you can kind of go, I think I've seen this before a lot, or I'm seeing this issue really relevant, and maybe things that you go straight to the toolbox and go, all right, we need to start looking at that immediately for more people than not?
Oh, that's a great one. I see a lot, and this is a human condition really, I was going to say I see a lot of fear, but that is something that will underpin most human decisions. We're motivated, are we moving towards pleasure or away from pain or away from fear? And I say fear even though it shows up in different ways. So fear can be, and particularly I think when it comes to careers or relationships, the fear of making a change. So you might not have the voice in your head saying, I'm afraid of making change, but it can be, I couldn't do that. I don't know how to start. Something that I hear so often, and I've heard over the years of helping probably thousands of people now change careers, when I say, what's something you've always liked or wanted to do, or what lights you up? And particularly working with engineers, the number one thing that I heard, this might be interesting, is wanting to be a pilot. And so...
It's my career choice. I just don't have the mathematical ability.
And that might be a fair a fair one, right? We'd be too busy talking to people.
Yeah, I'd be on the loudspeaker all the time. So look, down to your left is a really... No. But yes, it makes sense, the transferable skills. So.
Yeah, but with that one, most of them didn't even try. So that often when I'll ask clients, what was it? What was a dream that you had, or what was something that you really wanted to do? And I noticed that commonality, particularly with the engineering mindset of wanting to be a pilot. Did you ever try? No. And so what I see with people, and this might happen, you might have your own version, whoever's watching this, people will have an idea, but they never even try. And that, I think, is what really touches my heart. And that there's a quote, I can't remember who it's attributed to, most men leading lives of quiet desperation. And I think that always really struck me, because I thought, what if there are so many people out there that have had these little hopes? They've never tried, and they're just going through life, going through the motions. I'll just do this job because it's enough to pay the bills and relationships. And so where I'm going with this story is I see patterns, I hear things people say, I look at their eyes, their body language, listen to the way that they talk about their lives. And if I can do one thing in my coaching practice, it's to help empower people to actually believe that they can try, but also have a plan to get there.
It's interesting. I actually think you're right. I think people who live lives that are fully fulfilled are the exception to the rule, not the rule, which is sad, really, when you think about it. I mean, I love what I do 98% of the time, and we don't talk about the other 2%. I get the vibe that it's exactly the same for yourself.
Yeah.
So many people I speak to are, I've always wanted to do this, but why? I wanted to be the chief executive of, why?
Yeah.
It's such a powerful question. And a lot of people, I think it's societal expectations and things of that nature, whereas maybe just being a pilot would make people happy. You know?
Totally.
Get on that plane. It's not that hard. 25 hours of education will get you a pilot's license. That's
amazing. I think even the trying though, right? Like, and of course, as I've been running my own business, I don't know about you and your business experience, I read all the things on LinkedIn and Instagram, and something that I think I also learnt the hard way, which hopefully I can impart to my clients, is, not everything works out perfectly, which is also a fear for a lot of people. What if it doesn't work out? What if I'm not perfect? What if someone thinks I'm wrong? But there is such grace and beauty in even trying the thing, to try lots of different things, because then you learn something about yourself. And I think that is actually a really beautiful thing that doesn't often get talked about.
Fear.
Yeah.
Fear of rejection, fear of failure.
Yeah.
Fear. I think it's.
Well, what about the fear of not trying and the fear of never actualizing your potential?
Glass half full. Most people, I think, maybe unfortunately glass half empty. That's great. So when people work with you, they will sit there and go through the process of internally looking at what, forcing them on that journey and taking them on that roadmap, but also really kind of going, all right, well, what's going to make me happy? And asking questions I assume that people don't ever ask.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, there's, if I can share one little story actually of one of my clients. He was a CEO for about 20 years, and probably a little bit like the royal family expectations, was a multi-generational family business. And the day after he finished his HSC, or whatever the finishing things are called now, sound like an old person. He was, the day after he finished those final exams, he was pulled in, and like, that was the expectation, right? Here's the crown. You've now got to step up, and this is what you were born to do. And so when he came to me 20 years later, he said, I never really wanted to do this. I've done my time, but for 20 years, I've never thought about what it is that I want. So I don't even know how to think about what I want, but, there's family and financial expectations. But he said, I can't ignore that feeling anymore, that there's got to be something else. And that's causing me so much pain that I can't ignore it. So sort of the pain, when that pain of staying the same becomes too great, that's when we're willing to look at something different. So the courage of that guy to say, you know what, I'm going to start thinking about myself, thinking about my needs, thinking about what I want. I don't even know what that looks like. And that's what these coaching sessions can look like. For some people it's being a thought partner or a mirror, just to hear them out in a safe space. And a lot of guys don't want to talk to their wives about these things. They don't want to burden them. So it can be hey, help me make some decisions. Or it can be oh my gosh, working through, a life of all sorts of stuff. Help me understand myself so I can move forward. So there's all sorts.
And do you think it's, the generally speaking, 20s, 30s, we're rat racing. We're all running around trying to be something, whatever that may be. By the time you get to some level of security, surety, however you wish to kind of portray that, 50 is halfway for most people, maybe even more as we continue to grow and advance in the world. Is it kind of that point of like, I guess the question, is it a correlation between the fact that that age is just when people start to think about things a bit more?
Mm.
Or do you think it's I'm 20 years into doing this shit, insert whatever it may be,
Mm.
I should actually stop and think about it? Is it causation or correlation?
Oh, both potentially. I sort of make the quip, but this might be this might be right. It's like what I see with guys coming off what I call the sex, money, power arc. So they come off the SMP arc, and that can tend to be in around the mid 40s. And what I mean by that is they might have been in relationships for a while. Some people have never settled down and starting to get the mortality thing. Like, ooh, okay, what does this look like?
Yeah.
Do I still want to be the lone wolf, or what does a relationship look like? Or they are thinking about fulfillment. Interestingly, I don't come across that many guys that have changed careers a lot, and so again, I think that can cause that uncertainty of well, what does it mean to be fulfilled? What would that look like to make a change? And understandable, right? When there are kids' school fees and there are mortgages and a bunch of other things at play, I really respect. This isn't a light decision, but also I just don't believe that we are meant to be miserable or 60% content. I just don't believe that we're all gifted with these beautiful skills and talents. So at some point, maybe it is meant to be, because we're feeling humans, that you'll get that little voice, or you'll get that feeling where you're like, is there something else, and it's worth exploring.
I think once you remove some of those expectations too, be it, I'm financially free, I've climbed to the peak of whatever it was that I was doing in the past, maybe those questions become more pertinent for people and they start to go, what if?
Yeah, yeah.
Life with regret, imagine, it'd be horrible, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and there's a book, or is a quote about the regrets of the dying. I don't know who wrote it, but often it's talked about.
Yeah.
And that is touted as one of them, right? It's the not having tried, not having loved more, all these things that actually really matter in life. That if you got to the end and went, oh, I'd always wanted to try this, why didn't I try that? And I look back on mistakes that I made when I was younger, things that I didn't do because I was scared I'd be rejected, because I'd be scared I wasn't enough. Like, I'm human as well. I have all these doubts and foibles, but I think if you're at that point now where you're starting to question, things might have changed, right? You might have had some sort of catalyst relationship. There can be loss, things to do with family. It could be a career transition, redundancies. We all have these life catalyst moments that can be the start of a questioning experience. But I think with having a plan is super important. Having a plan, having support, having accountability, that will help us through those challenging times.
Those inflection points.
Yeah.
They're the opportunity to stop, take stock, and figure out where you want to go from here. We've talked a lot about how you help other people, which is great. Let's pretend that we're in the aged care, because that's where that comes from, the aged care home, what people ask about, regrets, etc. When you look back on life thus far, what are you most happy about? What brings you the most joy? What lights you up?
I think that experience that I mentioned, actually even getting into the fitness industry and just knowing that some opportunities or some moments are born out of uncertainty, or just having to be resourceful when your back's up against the wall, or when there's an intuition or a knowing, and really switching on and using all our skills like I did when I moved to Ibiza. So I'm really proud of those experiences and some of the fun work things that I've done as well. But, let's not confuse identity with work. As someone who's a coach on that area, I think the things that I receive feedback on and the things that bring me joy are my relationships with people. Like I love caring for people, reaching out, seeing how they are, through the networking and business connection group that we know each other from as well. Like I think being surrounded by people and seeking out people as well who challenge and inspire us, where we can help and support each other. That's the gold of life. Seeing other people fly and succeed because we care for them. So I think it's, who we are is so much more than the work that we do. I think absolutely try and find work that aligns with your skills and with that joy. But, the things that light me up are people and relationships and movement and life and sunrises and cake and dancing,
All the good stuff.
all of the good stuff, all of it together.
In one day
Ideally,
would be
yes.
great. Yeah, that's it. What advice would you give to people that are getting that gnawing feeling, starting to be not sure, which I'm sure a lot of people before they come to you go through a process in their own mind of like, I don't know what this is. Am I going through a midlife crisis or what have you, however you wish to term it.
Yeah.
What if someone's listening to this go, I hadn't thought about this. Thanks, Mim. Now I'm thinking about things I don't want to think about. There's obviously a reason for that. What advice do you give to someone early on in their own journey on this?
Well, even before you give me a call to actually book in that session, there are things that you can do. Journaling, just so you can get the thoughts out. Now, if you're like, oh, I'm not a writer, or what do? I sit there with like a pen and a paper, or sit there at your computer. The great thing is with AI now, I mean, there's so much you can get from any AI platform. And in fact, I work with a few clients where I encourage them to get their thoughts out in ChatGPT or Claude or whatever it is that they're using. Get some of those thoughts out, and AI can have a really good conversation with you now, and you can tell it all the weird, twisted shit that you might want to tell another human. So there are some advantages. Try and get some of your thoughts out how you can. It might even be just a voice note on your phone, right? If you don't feel like writing, you can sit there and do your little voice note in a phone just to get some of it out. So writing or talking it out might be interesting using AI. There are some great books. I mean, there's some oldies and goodies out there. I think there's I Could Do Anything I Want, if any I knew what it was. It's been around for a long time. And What Color Is My Parachute? There are various profiling tools that you can engage in as well to try and get clear on what your skills are. But I think, when we're trying to solve the problem in here, and if all of our thoughts were made public, probably all of us would be in jail by now. So let's face it, we know the inside of this is not always trustworthy and it's not always real. So, so if we're just riding that roller coaster of all of our thoughts and emotions, it's hard to get a sense for it. And I usually find when people finish a session, or even if I'm just talking with a friend, right, or when I've been on the receiving end, it feels so much better to talk it out. How often do we hear that? How often do we say that? Going for a walk, having a chat with someone, and just start to make sense of what's going on. However, if you are that person who is feeling stuck, and this is particularly for the men who usually want to know the how first, like I need to know the how and the plan and figure that out
What are we going to do?
before I go and talk to someone. It doesn't always work like that. So even just saying, I'm stuck, here's some things that I'm interested in exploring, like the CEO that I mentioned. He was like, well, I've spent all my life knowing what I don't want. Now I need to figure out what I do want. Like, that's perfect. We can do something from there. So the how is where I come in and where I help people. So you do not have to know the how. You do not have to know the plan. I know that can feel a bit scary, but just starting to jot down, this is some reoccurring ideas. This is what wakes me up at 3 a.m. I've always wanted to do this. And for anyone that's interested, obviously I can share some resources around that. There's a model called Ikigai, where it's, I don't know if you've seen
Japanese.
it. Yeah, where it's looking at your purpose. And
kind of, the art of doing something you really are meant to be doing.
Yeah, so there's some handy frameworks. There's lots of amazing resources out there as well. So I can encourage anyone to use AI, download some resources, chat to someone that you trust, and work with a coach, and just start that process. You're only going to learn more about yourself. Start. That's it.
To distill that into one thing, start. Action.
Love it.
I like it. What else? What is there any other final thoughts that you want to share with people? Is there anything else? I mean, we've been through yourself, your background, how you do things, a little bit of everything in there. What have I missed? What have we missed?
There'd be so much we could do for podcasts 2 and 3. I don't know if we've missed anything, but I think if anything, it's just a message for those who are listening. And we've talked about what to do if you're thinking about, say, career and life changes. But something that I mentioned in our conversation was the more that we focus on what we want, and there's a saying, where focus goes, energy flows. The more that we focus on what we want, calling out the good behavior. When we see good things in our friends, in our colleagues, and whatever your gender and relationship status is, the more that we acknowledge and encourage our partners, our family, people tend to respond better. You give someone a compliment or a bit of feedback, you can just see them like stand a bit taller and expand. And often I think, when we're critical and we're noticing these moments, I'm offering a bit of coaching here for anyone. Often when we're critical of others or finding ourselves in places of judgment, it's actually a reflection of ourselves as well. So if I can encourage anyone who's watching and listening, it would be about being kinder to yourself, kinder to yourself, kinder to others. It does not mean you have to be a doormat and turn the other cheek. There's still a lot of place for boundaries and being assertive, but I think the world needs that focus.
I like it. I think it's, it's one of those things, right? If you're getting out what you're putting in type thing, right? If you're distilling negative energy, if you're out there talking about things negatively within businesses, even, if we just look in that context, generally what happens is that others follow that. So I agree. If you can take the moment to force or reconcile with yourself to be positive to start the day, it's the most basic piece of advice of all time. But it works,
isn't it? Even in sales or different aspects of business, if all you're saying is like, oh, customers aren't answering the phone, or like things are tough at the moment, if we're constantly focusing on all the stuff that's not going right, it doesn't really help us.
Yeah.
So it's got a business application as well as a life application. How do we ask better questions, focus on what we want?
You've had great quotes today. I'm actually going to finish with a stupid one, if you don't mind. It's I'm pretty sure it's Jack Sparrow. The problem is not the problem. It's your attitude towards the problem.
Oh, that's great.
Does it not just work, sadly?
Can you do it with a Jack Sparrow accent?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Jar of dirt. No, absolutely not. It's a hard accent to do, actually, to be honest.
That's all right. No, it's a really good one. Thank you, Jack Sparrow.
Yeah, it's brought some value to us. Where can people find you? How do they best engage and have conversation from here if they've kind of gone, I need help? How do they get in touch?
You can find me at miriamwood.com or on Instagram, Miriam Wood Coach, also on LinkedIn as well. And in the wise words of you, just start. So that can be just popping an email and just saying, want to have a chat about making a change. You see me, you hear me. I'm good, Val. I may not always wear sequins, but
There's a chance.
May get all my clients wearing sequins by the end. No, just kidding. I think if anything, I'm pretty laid back. I like to have a sense of humor. All this personal and professional development stuff doesn't have to be all heavy and serious. We can still be making change and have a bit of a laugh as well. So find me via miriamwood.com or on Instagram or LinkedIn under Miriam Wood, and let's start a conversation.
Love it. That's the way to finish. Thank you so much for your time. I've enjoyed it. Always do.
Thank you for having me.
The pleasure's been all mine. And thanks again to our friends at the Executive Centre for the opportunity to use the new podcast studio. It's been a good time. Thank you very much.